if we play at our best, we will beat every team in this league playing at their best. So who's it on? Whose shoulders does it fall on? Ours. Let's go get it.
Welcome to JetsCentralRadio. Joe Caporoso.
Extra, read all about it. You can win anywhere if you can win here. And you ain't been nowhere if you ain't been here. Well, so hard, yeah, really, in the game, man. Same place, different faces on the train, man. New York.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Turn on the Jets Central Radio. We are back heading into week 3 of the preseason, where the New York Jets will be taking on their crosstown, quote-unquote, rival, New York Giants. Rex Ryan announced today that if Geno Smith is healthy, he will be making his first career start. So that's something to be excited about. And Mark Sanchez has had a bit of an up and down preseason, to say the least. Moved the ball well. He's turned the ball over more than I think any of us, would have liked to see. But it will be interesting to see Geno, get a shot here and see if he can make some kind of noise and, get himself back into the running to start week 1. We covered this topic over on the site today about where the quarterback battle really is at right now and, how we see it kind of developing into this season. So definitely make sure to check that out. Tonight on the show, we are very happy. We're going to be joined by Evan Silva, senior football editor for Roto World, notorious Miami Dolphins fan. We're going to make sure we talk a little Dan Thomas and Jeff Ireland with him, among other things. Of course, with, fantasy football, and we'll talk about how he feels about this Jets offense and team overall heading into this season. So we're very happy and excited to have him on. He's always, a fun guy to interact with out there on Twitter, and recently just published out his top 150 fantasy football rankings. As it is that time of year, I had my first draft over the weekend, have another one upcoming this weekend down in Atlantic City. So as everybody knows, this is always a especially fun time of the year as we assemble our rosters. Couple of quick PSAs on the site. Tomorrow we're going to have another roundtable running, talking about things that we are most concerned with so far through the Jets preseason. We'll have a couple more film breakdowns in the back end of the week, and then we'll also have our normal 12-pack and preview content for Jets Giants running Thursday, Friday, and into kickoff Saturday night. Hopefully, if you're in the area, you won't have to worry about the Time Warner blackout, as I believe the game will be on NBC and should also be on UPN in the local area. So if you've been having issues with the CBS blackout, shouldn't be a problem this week. Or you could be like, do what I had to do and go to a local sports bar to watch the Jets game the past couple of weeks, which has obviously been frustrating. We're hoping that Time Warner and a CBS resolve that sooner rather than later, since the regular season is only a couple weeks away. We're going to hop into a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll be back with Evan Silva.
What up, Jets fans? This is Antoine Barnes, outside linebacker of the New York Jets. You're listening to Jets Central Radio. Hit me up on Twitter, Antoine Barnes 42. I'll see you.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central Radio Network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
And we are back at Turn on the Jets Central Radio. We are now joined by the senior football editor at Roto World, Evan Silva. Evan, how you doing tonight?
What's up, Joe? I'm pretty good.
Evan, I got to ask you to start off. Tell me why Jeff Ireland's going to be working alongside Mike Tannenbaum next year. And obviously that means not being the Dolphins GM this time next season.
Yeah, it's humorous to just sit back and watch it unfold. 4 consecutive losing seasons, tries to, in the final year of his contract, tries to build the team through free agency, obvious desperation. And this thing's going to go down quickly early in the season. I mean, it's going to happen real quickly. This team is going to collapse. They play the Ravens. They play the Falcons. They play the Saints in New Orleans. They play the Colts. I think they're going to lose in week 1 at Cleveland. I wouldn't be surprised if they, quote-unquote, emerge from their first 5 games 0-5 and head start role maybe by midseason. It's going to get ugly quick, Joe.
So are you telling me that a running back by committee with Daniel Thomas, with Jonathan Martin up front, isn't going to get off to a hot start and challenge New England for the division title in the AFC East this year?
Daniel Thomas, the concussion-prone, fumbling plotter, if they give him carries, if they give him significant snaps early in the season, that's going to just expedite their collapse. I mean, you guys saw it happen with Sean Green in New York. When you're giving the football to an ineffective player and your personnel, your coaching staff doesn't even realize that this player is ineffective, that's a great way to doom your team. And the Dolphins seem pretty intent on doing that early in the year, putting Daniel Thomas into a committee with a far more talented running back. Look, Jamal Charles had fumbling problems. Adrian Peterson had fumbling problems. Good teams realize that you learn to live with errors like the ones that Lamar Miller makes, because they'll get better. They're young players. When you have to be able to recognize that potential. Daniel Thomas has 256 carries in the NFL. He does not have the potential to be a difference maker. The Dolphins don't realize that, and it starts at the top, and this thing's going to get ugly quick.
Yeah, I just think the influx of expectations for them, particularly when you said that, trying to build through free agency, and we've seen time and time again, it doesn't work that way. You have to build through the draft, and it takes time. And, there's a reason that Miami has had a losing record the last 4 years and hasn't, threatened for a playoff spot, since they had that, year with Pennington when they, broke out the Wildcat, which unfortunately the Jets are still using elements of from time to time. Let's move over to our Jets, and offensively, let's pray best case scenario. Chris Ivory starts. Let's say he's healthy. He plays in 14 to 16 games. What is the ceiling on the kind of production we could expect from him?
Well, I think that some of it is dependent on line play. Are they going to be able to work in Brian Winters into the starting lineup? I think that they need to do that. But hey, if he's not ready, then you got to go with Peterman. But Peterman he has been a liability. I like the rest of the line from left to right. And, this team needs to be a run foundation team. It needs to have a healthy running back, a guy that can be accountable. It needs to have a top 5 to 7 rushing attack in the entire NFL, I think, just to go 8-8. Now, I do think there is some potential for that. I really do. I think that Chris Ivory is a big-time talent. I think he's got comparable skills to Marshawn Lynch. I like that Bilal Powell has looked a little bit quicker in the preseason than he did last year. It looks like he's dropped some weight. I think he's got a little bit more burst than he did last year. And I think that he could be a viable third down back. But this team is going to need to play top-notch defense. I think that it's going to need to have an elite running game to be competitive week in and week out, because they just don't have the personnel in the passing game to have an effective passing attack.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's such a question mark at the quarterback position, whether it's going to be the inconsistency in the turnovers of Mark Sanchez, or, we still don't really know what Geno Smith is or if he's going to be ready. We just haven't seen enough of him yet this preseason. In terms of their pass catchers, has Jeff Cumberland kind of caught your eye this preseason? He's got a couple touchdowns through, 2 games, and I always thought, if there was going to be a Jet pass catcher to, at least consider fantasy-wise, it would be Curley from a PPR perspective. But
right.
Do you think Cumberland could be a guy who might be able to be a factor if Morningway is going to keep the tight ends involved?
In fantasy football, I don't think so. Toward the end of the tight end pecking order in that top 12, you got guys like Martellus Bennett, you got Jared Cook. I think that these guys have a lot more potential than someone like Jeff Cumberland. Whether he can be an asset to the Jets on the field, that would be what I would be concerned with He looked so good. He looked pretty good so far. Curley is going to be Curley. They have a chance to get back Santonio Holmes. I really don't even think that it matters. They need to be able to hide their quarterback like they did during Mark Sanchez's quote unquote good years. They have to run a low volume, theoretically high percentage passing offense, or else they are going to struggle. I wish that the defense would have looked a little bit better last week. I think it'll still be strong. Losing Copel's hurts. This team doesn't have a whole lot of depth, but I think that they can still be a team that surprises some people. Rex Ryan gets the most out of his teams. I mean, if you look back at the personnel that the 2012 Jets had, they shouldn't have won 6 games. I don't think they should have won 6 games. I think they should have won maybe 3 or 4, and he can maximize the talent that he has, particularly on defense. But there's not a whole lot of room for error.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look last year, this was a team who was giving people like Marty Gilliard and,
right,
major reps down the stretch. It got ugly at times. One last question on the Jets offense before we just hop around real quick to some general fantasy questions. Long term, maybe not necessarily this year. Any hope for Stephen Hill kind of developing into at least a usable, viable, deep threat, maybe long term next year with Geno Smith when he's a little further along? I think he's made some strides in camp this year, but the physical tools are there. It's just, is he really going to be able to put together the nuances of playing NFL receiver?
Yeah, and we knew that he was a project coming out. In hindsight, it shouldn't be a surprise that he largely struggled as a rookie. He obviously had some injuries. The good news is that he has mostly stayed healthy. Here's his rookie year. He's getting better. Is he going to be productive? I think it's dependent on quarterback play. It depends on, can they get the football downfield? Because I think that he's always going to be kind of a limited receiver. He's that X-receiver type. I think in an ideal world he would become Braylon Edwards in his prime. But, you got to be able to get the football downfield, whether it's off play action, whether it's with a big arm quarterback, for him to be truly productive. I do think he's made strides, and that's good news for the Jets. I just don't think he's going to have a whole lot of production this year. I think he's going to continue to be an inconsistent player in 2013.
All right, just a couple quick-hitting fantasy questions since we're all gearing up for our drafts at this time of the year. These are just some ones I've had sent in by a few different people. What rookie running back do you like best for this year, and then as a rookie running back in a keeper or dynasty league?
I mean, we've got 2 preseason games under our belt, and I don't think there's any question that Eddie Lacy has looked like the best running back through the preseason so far. I also thought that he was the best running back coming out of college in this class. I think he fell for some injury concerns. He has missed a little bit of time in camp. That's going to be probably a concern for him throughout his career, but the guy's got a lot of ability. I mean, he runs the power. He finishes every run. He can play in the passing game. You already see him playing, lining up next to Aaron Rodgers in the shotgun. I thought that was an excellent sign from their last preseason game. They trust him in pass protection. He can catch the football. I think that he's got some Jerome Bettis to him, and he would definitely be atop my running back rankings right now among the rookies.
What guy who is, generally being considered a consensus top, let's say 8 to 10 pick is most likely to bust this year? Is it Arian Foster because of the health concerns?
I'd say so. I mean, there are so many red flags on Arian Foster, and it's not just the calf in the back. I mean, it's the fact that the Texans have overused him over the past 3 seasons, and it's easy for us to say this in hindsight. The Texans have been a run-first team, and Ben Tate hasn't been healthy, so they have leaned heavily on Arian Foster. Over the past 3 years, he leads the NFL in offensive touches. In 2012, he led the NFL in rushing attempts. his yards per carry average has dwindled pretty steadily over the past 2 years. And in 2012, he set a career low in yards per reception. I think when you watch him, he's losing big playability. And now, after those huge workloads, he can't recover from these injuries. He has lost his ability to recover quickly from what are supposedly minor injuries. And yeah, I mean, I would pretty much scratch him off my draft board. I would take somebody else in the first round.
All right, and who is someone that you're seeing that's being undervalued? Maybe a guy who's going, in the 3rd to 4th round who, might deserve consideration as a back-end first-round pick or a second-round pick?
Well, Stephen Ridley usually goes in the 2nd round, and I think that he deserves to be considered there with Alfred Morris. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between those two guys. Last year, Alfred Morris had 30 more carries, so he was a little bit more productive. But, hey, Stephen Ridley was a top 10 fantasy running back in 2012. The Patriots don't have a lot of returning skill position players that they can count on. Stephen Ridley is one of those few. And they have an elite offensive line. They have an elite offense that consistently generates ball movement, puts the running back in scoring positions. I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns. I think he's going to get more carries than he did last year. I think that he's a guy who, if you get him in the 2nd round, I think he's going to give you first-round value.
All right, one last question, and then we'll let you go. Do the Oakland Raiders win more than 3 games this year? Give me a good reason they win more than 3 games this season.
I mean, I can't pretend. I can't pretend. I live in a world of reality, and I can't sit here and pretend that the Raiders are going to win more than 3 games, because they're not. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went 0-16. I've been looking at rosters for the last 8 years, working for RotoWorld. I always made one of my priorities to look at teams' rosters, understand them, understand how much each team has, understand how good players are. And I have never seen a roster entering a season that is as bad as the 2013 Raiders. I mean, it is like a UFL team. They're starting Alex Barron at left tackle. They're starting Andre Gurod at right guard. This is going to be an absolute nightmare of a season, and I wonder whether their GM, Reggie McKenzie, is going to last into 2014. I mean, I think they go 0-16, 1-15. They are lucky. They play in the same division as the Chargers, who look really bad as well. Maybe they beat the Chargers at home or something, but I don't think they're winning. I think their ceiling is 2 wins.
All right, man. I really appreciate it. We're going to be following you all year on Twitter at Evan Silva. This is Evan Silva, senior football editor at RotoWorld. Tons of great content on, fantasy and just NFL in general. Thanks again for taking the time for joining us.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right, and that was Evan Silva of RotoWorld. We are going to wrap up this week's episode. Look for the link on turnonthejets.com, on Pro Football Central, of course, and make sure you stay with us all week, as we'll have our Jets-Giants preview content in full swing starting tomorrow and then carrying through right up until kickoff Saturday. Have a good week, everybody.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.